Hey guys, Coach Chris here, back with another video, picking up with round 2 from the second annual Mayfield Summer Open. Really great tournament, highly recommend it. Alright, so round 2. Had the black pieces, my opponent opened with d4, responded with d5, and here my opponent played bishop f4. So, starts with the London system. I play knight f6, just developing a piece towards the center. And here opponent plays knight c3, so we're not in a traditional London, we're in a Jobava London. And I'm interested in this opening. I think it's an interesting way to play. White prioritizes piece development, would on a good day like to castle queenside, and then it would make sense to have the knight in front of the c-pawn. You need to have a nice queenside shelter for the king, and you'd be able to throw the kingside pieces at the black king without having to worry about your king being stuck in the middle. So it's an interesting way to play. It's not a classical way to play. The classical school of chess says, especially in queen's pawns openings, the knight belongs behind the c-pawn so that you could put maximum pressure on the d5 pawn and fight for maximum control of the center with the c-pawn. But that's not the idea behind the Jobava London. The idea is to develop quickly and start an attack. I play bishop f5, and notice the difference between my early bishop f5 in round 2 and my opponent's early bishop f5 in round 1. In round 1, I had the knight behind the c-pawn, my c-pawn was here. That opened up the b3 square for my queen to attack the weak b7 pawn, which was weak because I moved my bishop out. Here, that's obviously not in play because the knight's in front of the c-pawn. So bishop f5 is just good to go. Opponent plays knight f3, e6, just preparing to develop, bishop e3. And now my bishop has some interesting squares. I went with what I thought would be the most aggressive one, bishop b4, pinning this knight. There's not a very convenient way to break the pin because the dark squared bishop is outside the pawn chain. And so white just keeps developing with bishop d3. I went knight e4, applying more pressure to this pinned piece. And my opponent just took on e4. I recaptured with the bishop, castles, and now I went ahead and grabbed the opportunity to damage the pawn structure and took on c3. Not necessary, but I wanted to create an imbalance in the position, a structural imbalance right away, and know what I was playing for in this middle game. I castled, and my opponent played knight g5. So this attacks my bishop, brings the piece closer to the king, opens up this diagonal for the queen. Engine says it's an inaccuracy, but it's always very unpleasant to defend. And here, opponent uncorked h4. I kick the knight away, knight goes back to f3, and here what I really wanted to do was play knight d7, rook c8, play c5, so that I can fight for the center, hopefully open up the c-file against these doubled pawns for the rook, and get my own play started. I need to finish queenside development. White has 2 pieces out and is castled. I've only got 1 piece out and I'm castled. So I'm a little bit behind in development. But instead of developing here, I played bishop h5, and I thought about that move for a while. The idea is to prevent g4, because if I just play knight d7 here, g4 is definitely coming. And even if this is objectively really great for black, it still feels uncomfortable to have to defend your king. I was worried about ideas like, for example, queen h2, bring the rook over, g5 to try to blow up the position, or h5 first, bishop back, and then g5 trying to open up my king. I didn't want to go in for that, especially in a rapid game. The time control was 40 plus 10. So I didn't want to go in for that. I decided to play bishop h5, which just prevents g4 entirely. and I decided to prioritize development on the next move. My opponent played g3, and I immediately recognized that that means this bishop has no more squares and is subject to being trapped. The engine says the best way to do that is to start with f6 and then just e5, for example, or g5. But again, there are ways that could go wrong for black if I'm not accurate. So for example, I looked at g5, and after takes, what the engine says is you just take back. For some reason, I was worried about knight takes g5, thinking that I was going to be exposing my king side. I've lost my king side pawn shelter. But the engine points out that if we trade down here, so suppose queen takes, well now the queen is over here to guard the king and there's no danger. And if white would prefer to take here, well now we've traded queens and there's definitely no danger. Let's just say something like this. Well now there aren't pieces to attack me on the king side, and I should just be able to get my extra piece involved and win easily. So I was worried about opening up my king unnecessarily. Maybe the best line to illustrate this would be, suppose black took right away. Now if queen takes, and we try to win this piece, now this is a little bit scary. Well, not just scary, it's winning for white, because white leaves the bishop here and immediately gets the rooks involved and tries to deliver checkmate on the h-file. So I was seeing lines like that, and I thought practically winning this piece is just not worth it. Mostly because I just misevaluated the position and didn't calculate well. But I thought it would be much more practical to just enjoy my good position here. White has no attack, and if I can get my queenside pieces developed, try to open up the c-file, then I'll just be better. Because right now, one of the main ideas of the Jobava London is to plan a knight on e5 and to attack with a g-file. Well, right now the knight can't move and the pawn can't move. So white is a long way away from achieving the ideal setup, and I plan to use that time to fight back in the center. So I'd say an inaccurate but practical decision from me. Inaccurate, but also, according to the engine, completely winning. So don't feel bad about this choice at all. King g2, defending the knight. It's still pinned for the moment. Rook c8, again, I've already told you what my plan is. I want to play c5. And here, rook g1. So before I play c5 immediately, I decided to first play knight f6, bringing two attackers to the square. I was hoping to prevent ideas like king h3 and g4, because I wanted to be able to chase that king away with bishop g4 check and just clamp down on white's only idea here. White's only idea is to attack me on the king side. If I take that away, I felt like I would just win easily. So opponent played queen d3, finally unpinning the knight, and now I've got time to get c5 in. Knight e5 comes, but black is already doing great here and is just flat out winning according to the engine. I took on d4, opening up the c-file for my rook. He recaptured e-pawn. I targeted that weak c3 pawn, and I saw the following line even here, that if he tried to advance the pawn, which is what happened in the game, I could take with tempo, hitting the queen, and if knight recaptures, then it just loses the piece to queen d5 check. Here he picked the worst square for his king, because now when I take this piece, the queen is pinned to the king, and so not only am I going to be up a piece here, but I'm also getting queens off the board, so there's no king danger, and it's just a matter of converting the endgame a piece up with no complications, which I was able to do. So queen takes, rook takes. He attacked my b-pawn, I just defended it. He played bishop e5, threatening to double the pawns, but my win condition here is to trade down, trade off all the pieces, and just win the piece up in game. So I'm happy to let him double my pawns and trade off his one remaining minor piece when I have an extra remaining minor piece. So I played bishop f3, trying to prevent my bishop from being blocked in, and this is also just a very annoying square for white's king. He took and I recaptured, again happy to trade down. He played g4, could take either pawn here, but I chose the d pawn to make sure that the rook can help defend laterally if necessary. It was probably an unnecessary concern, but that's what I did. Rook g3, and I took the opportunity to get a pair of rooks off the board. Again, such an annoying square for the king. Takes, I'm attacking the c-pawn. He pushes with g-pawn, but I can just take everything on g5, and this is just one check. This is nothing to be afraid of. The king can advance. I offer to trade his final major piece for my final major piece, and just try to win this easily winning piece up in game. He keeps rook on the board, which is the right call, trying to at least pull a swindle out. I return the bishop first to f3 and then just cement it on d5 where it's protected. This is an eternal bishop. It can't be kicked out. And then it's just a matter of targeting these weak pawns. He checks my king. I just tuck it in on f6. And here, very, very common mistake is to miss that bishops and knights can move backwards, and he hung the rook on a8. So with that, he resigned. Interesting game. I usually don't feel very comfortable against the Jobava London, but felt good in this game. I felt like my play was very principled. It was central based, logical, rapid development, fighting for the center. The decision to not win the piece I was okay with at the time, and I'm okay with now, because again, I wanted to get caught up in development. I didn't want to expose my king unnecessarily. I was worried about perpetual checks more than him mating me or anything. And white just is going to take a long time to do anything in this position, and I felt like I could use that time to create very serious threats, and then white still won't be able to follow his plan because he's got to respond to my threats, and that's exactly what happened in the game. So yeah, overall I liked this game quite a bit, felt comfortable the whole time, and it all worked out. So, thanks for watching, hope you got something out of it, and keep grinding those tactics.